Hello viewers, continuing the episode of Mendel's experiments, we reached a conclusion that the 7 characters that Mendel studied, they were all pointing towards a 3:4 is to 1:4 ratio of the individuals as far as their phenotypes is concerned in the F2 generation. Even it may not be exactly an arithmetic 3:1, but the pattern was approaching an arithmetic mean of 3:1. Mendel was also worried as to what would happen to the pure and the impure of the aspects, that means the genotypic ratio, of which we are going to discuss now. So, considering the 7 experiments, Mendel gave his 3 or the first 3 postulates, and these 3 postulates are, he said that there is a consistent pattern which emerges out of the monohybrid crosses, and the postulates or the principles of inheritance. He never gave the laws. He said that these are the principles which underlie the consistent pattern which we have. The first of these principles that he enunciated was unit factors, they occur in pairs, which means the genetic characters are controlled by unit factors, and these unit factors, they exist in pairs in the individual organisms. For example, in the monohybrid cross, which involves a tall and a dwarf stems, you would find that each factor is responsible for each trait, and therefore, each diploid individual would receive one of these factors from each of his parents. This was the first idea. And because the factors, they are occurring in pairs, 3 combinations are possible, as we saw in the first cross. That means 2 factors for tall stems, 2 factors which we talked about homozygous dominant, 2 factors for dwarf stems which we talked as the homozygous recessives, and 1 for each factor, which means a heterozygous ones. So, Mendel had already reached an important conclusion that every individual would possess one of these 3 combinations which will determine the stem height. The second principle which he enunciated was that now what happens to these factors in terms of their expression. So, he said that when 2 unlike unit factors are responsible for a single character and they are present in a single individual, obviously one has to express itself, and the unit factor which is dominant to the other will express itself, and the one which is overshadowed would be called as the recessive one. So, that means in each monohybrid cross, the trait which is expressed in the F1 generation is obviously controlled by the dominant unit factor, and the trait which is there, but it is somehow not expressed by the recessive unit factor, is the recessive one. He asked himself the question, the trait which is somehow being overshadowed and which is not expressed in the F1 generation, has it gone forever? Will it never express itself? If it would, then in what would be the pattern in which it would do so? So, for this he gave the third postulate, and that was that during the formation of gametes of the F1 generation, the paired unit factors would separate or would segregate, but this segregation would be random, not following any pattern. So, it would be random, so that each gamete would receive one or the other with equal likelihood. Now, this word likelihood also prompts us to know a little more about the concept of probability, which we would do very shortly. So that means what Mendel had in mind was that if an individual contains a pair of like unit characters, then all the gametes would receive one of that character, one or the other of this unit factor. Based on this axiom, he said that if the individual contains unlike unit characters, then each gamete would have 50% chances or probability of receiving either the kind of unit character or the other. For example, if the genotype of an individual is capital T or small t, then there are 50% chances that one of the gametes, 50% of these gametes would have capital T, and the other remaining 50% would have smaller t. So then it's a matter of further fertilization or a matter of chance which one fuses with which one of the other parent to give rise to what type of a genotype and hence what type of a phenotype. So when we were talking about the cross between two breeding strains having the alternate forms, so that means we have to somehow now visualize as to how the genotypes and the phenotypes which are now resulting from combining these gametes during fertilization, how are they depicted. And the depiction of these crosses can be represented by two well defined and well established methods. That is the Punnett square method, which the students always do, and of course a little more complicated branch diagram. We will have a discussion on both of them. The Punnett square method, which we say is the most common one, was developed by the German geneticist Reginald Punnett. Actually, this square method is a representation showing the possible combination of genes that the offspring of parents could have. And in each of these possible gametes, what we do is we assign them a column or a row. So there are two columns, the vertical and the horizontal ones. By convention, the vertical column is represented by the female parent, and the horizontal row, it represents the male parent. So that means with every Punnett square, the writing of these symbols is also mandatory. Otherwise, how would we know that what is crossing with what? Now, this is a case where we are going to set up a Punnett square. Setting of a Punnett square would mean that when we have the gamete formations of D and D, that is capital D and small d, we have the vertical ones as the female. The female symbol is erroneously put inside, it should have been outside, and the male is on the horizontal side. So that means we are making a square. So obviously, when we have 2 on one axis and the other 2 on the other, that means it makes 2 into 2, 4 combinations. When it makes 4 combinations, it would mean that now we have to fill in these squares. So these squares, when we fill, actually what they represent is they represent fertilization. So when we cross capital D and small d, as you can see on the screens, we have 4 different combinations, and on the right hand side we find the results of the F2, where we find that there is one individual capital D homozygous and one small d on the other hand. So that means they constitute 1/4, but then this 1/4 to the 1/4 of the former we add 1/2, that is half of the other, which means the capital D and small d. So that means total it becomes 3/4 as tall. So these are all ratios which are phenotypic ratios 3:1 and genotypic ratios 1:2:1. So it's a very easy method to talk about the monohybrid cross. And likewise, we have taken example of the purple flowers, which was another of the crosses of Mendel, and we have made a checkerboard or the Punnett square, as we call it more technically, to give rise to a 3:1 situation, where 3 of the F2 generation progeny are purple flowered and 1 is white flowered. It's a good method, all right, but it's a simple way to represent the relative frequency of genotypes and phenotypes of the next generation. However, the problem is that when we are considering more than one of the characters, as we would soon see in the dihybrid cross or in the trihybrid cross onwards, now the problem will be that the number of gametes will be more. In a monohybrid cross, we were taking 2 into 2, then so that the combinations were 4. In a dihybrid, it would be 4 into 4 into 16. Then we would go on, and that means from 16, then we talk about 64, 32, 64, and then 128, 256, 512, and 1024 and 2048. Now 2048, who's going to make 2048 squares? It is going to be very, very complicated and cumbersome, and there is a lot of scope for filling it out erroneously. So for that, we have a branch diagram. This branch diagram is also a forked diagram, and this in fact helps us to determine the expected genotype and phenotype frequency based on the rules of probability as to what would be the what are the chances of one of the gamete fusing with another. So that means once we talk about the branch diagram or the fork line method, we need to remember the dominance recessiveness relationship of this allelic pair itself. We will have a separate discussion on the rules of probability, like the law of summation, the law of or the product rule, the product the multiplication rule, the factorial analysis, and of course the chi-square method. But then these are all the statistical notations and the mechanisms to find out the complex numericals that we would face in Mendelism. But then to put it in a very simple manner, what would be probability? Probability means what is the ratio of a number of times a particular event can be expected to occur to the number of trials during which the event would have occurred. To give you a very, very simple example, we have a pack of playing cards, and we know that the pack of playing cards is having 52 cards, and there are 13 each of the different types. For example, there are 13 of aces, 13 of hearts, 13 of clubs, and of course the rest 13 of diamonds. If you shuffle this entire pack and ask me to take out from this pack one of the cards which has a heart. Now, what is the probability? When I pick up a heart from this deck, the chances are only 1 by 4. Why? Because we have a total of 52 cards and the cards for hearts are only 13. So what is the chance that I would pick up? The chances would be a heart, it would be just 1 in 4. So the probability here is 0.25, that is 1/4. Keeping this in mind, we again come back to one of Mendel's crosses, the classical crosses, that is the monohybrid one between the smooth seeds and the wrinkled seeds. We find that in the F1 generation, all seeds are smooth. Fine. So when we are going to depict, this is a slide which we had before of the alleles of capital S and small s, when we had tried to explain the dominant and the recessive ones. And likewise, now the production into F2 generation would mean that we are talking about a cross which we can depict on the basis of the Punnett square. Now, this Punnett square also means that we have 2 into 2 into 4 and we have the different genotypes and the phenotypes. If we are going to translate it into a branch diagram, now how do we do that? We say that the gametes of the F1 cross, that is the parents, capital S and small s, they would be in what proportion? The proportion would be half to half. Likewise, the proportion of capital S and small s in the other parent would also be the same. So, if we have to branch now this, we would take the parent singly, that is one parent. So, one of the parents we take the gamete as half of the capital S, the other parent has half capital S and small s, and we multiply this capital S to the capital S of the two parents, and we get by the product rule 1 by 2 into 1 by 2 is equal to 1 by 4. That means the homozygous S. And likewise, the entire range you could see would mean that we have half out of these as capital S, small s, and the 1 by 4 of homozygous dominant and the homozygous recessive. Another very important point of this branch diagram is the notation. As you can see on the right hand side, we have mentioned that it is 3 by 4 capital S dash. Now, what does this dash mean? This dash means that it could be filled in by either a capital S or a small s. Now, this is a very important notation, because if we are looking at the F3 generation, anything which is capital S and capital S, as we have seen before, can produce only one type of gametes, whereas if it is capital S and small s, naturally it would have two types of gametes, as you can see in this diagram itself. So, that means the other is capital S or small s. The dominant smooth phenotype can be designated as capital S and dash, thereby saying that it really does not matter if it is a homozygous or a heterozygous S, it would still remain smooth seed. So, this is the basic idea. Considering all these aspects, we now come to the formulation of first law. That means, on the basis of all these aspects, it was Karl Correns who formulated Mendel's first law. To the dismay of many students and many books also, you find that there it is mentioned the first law, Mendel's first law, is the law of dominance. Well, it may not be true altogether. Actually, Mendel never gave the law of dominance. He said only a principle of dominance, and the first law, which was, and the laws obviously were formulated by Karl Correns as a matter of rediscovery, as we have seen in the history, and there are only two laws, right? So, the first law is Mendel's first law, which is the principle of segregation based on what we have just discussed. And so, it says that two members of a gene pair or alleles, they segregate or separate from each other in the formation of gametes. Half of the gametes would carry one allele and the other allele would be carried by the other half. If we look at this monohybrid cross results, we would find that the phenotypic ratio of the monohybrid cross is 3:1. Mendel only gave this 3:1 and not the genotypic ratio as per his principle. This was found out later. But then how did Mendel really justify the ratio of 1:2:1 as far as the pure and the impure progeny was concerned? It is obvious to know that out of the cross, 3/4 were yellow and 1/4 were green, if we were talking about the yellow and the green seeds. And now the 3/4 yellow would have only 1/4 pure breeding yellow ones, and the 2/4, that is half, would be impure. That means they would be heterozygous. and the remaining 1 by 4 would be pure breeding green. What we want to say is that you can depict it either by a Punnett square method or by the branch diagram. The notations are a little different, the meaning is obviously the same. If we now try to read through the lines of Mendel's work according to our modern terminology, Mendel had said everything which we now know. In this cross, we find that there are 5 basic axioms that Mendel had mentioned, and we are trying to illustrate these axioms. He said there is existence of genes, yes, and the genes were present in the parents. Now, the second, the genes were present in pairs, very true, they were present in pairs. If we look at the third point, that is, there was equal segregation, right, and much before that, halving of the genes in the gametes. Exactly, this is what is mentioned in the part 3, that is, there is halving of the genes, then only fertilization takes place, and then fourth, that there is equal segregation. This is the basis for the first law, and then of course the fourth, which we find as random fertilization, which ultimately led to the formulation of the genotypic ratio of 1:2:1. Now, the problem is we have 2 types of individuals. They are pure and as well as hybrid. They have different genotypes, say for example capital T or small t, or capital S or capital S small s. The irony is that they look the same. Now, you do not have to find out the genotype of every individual, because the phenotype is identical. Then how do we distinguish them genetically? Phenotypically is all right, because the phenotype is the same. So, that means how do we distinguish a pure and an impure? Impure here means a hybrid. By merely looking? No. For this, there has to be some testing, and Mendel performed this type of a test cross. We have displayed both a normal cross and a test cross. A test cross is a back cross between the F1 individual. I would not like to call it as a heterozygous individual. It is presumably heterogeneous. Had it been heterogeneous, then we would have established it before, then we had nothing else to prove. So, we want to prove that it is capital D and small d and not capital D, capital D. So, a presumed hybrid is crossed with a recessive homozygous parent. So, this is a type of a back crossing. So, a back cross with a recessive parent is called as a test cross. You should remember, all test crosses are back crosses. All back crosses may not be test crosses. We will come to it in a minute, because back cross could also mean a cross between the F1 progeny, supposedly heterogeneous one, with its homozygous dominant parent. Now, here we find that the ratio of test cross is 1:1. So, that means 50% are tall and 50% of the remaining progeny are dwarfs. So, this is the genotypic ratio. Apparently, they all look the same, but then by testing we come to a conclusion. So, that means the cross between a presumed heterozygote, we presume that it is capital Y and small y, and if it is so, then only it would give rise to a 1:1 ratio. Now, the question is, if it is presumed, we have proved that a test cross would establish whether the F1 progeny is a homogeneous one, a homozygous one, or a heterozygous one. So, we have proved the heterozygosity. Coming to the second part of the cross, which is the back cross. The normal back cross would be a cross between the presumed heterozygous F1 progeny and the dominant parent. Now, in this case, we would find that the gametes, even though they are of different kinds of the F1 individual, in the F2 all of them are going to be tall. So, that means if a cross between the presumed heterozygous and the parent, which is a dominant parent, a pure dominant parent, then all the progeny, they are the same. Now, the question is, why do we perform this back cross at all? If you see very carefully, a cross between, say, capital R and capital small r, in the coming 4 generations, the frequency of capital R has increased from 75% to almost 96.8%. So, it would mean that you are incorporating more and more of the dominant alleles, which means that a back cross is going to ensure more and more of the dominant alleles which is exhibited here, and there is a recovery of the elite genotype. Here in genetics, elite genotype would mean that we have pure dominant characters. A reciprocal cross, which we saw on the last turn, would also mean that it really doesn't matter which of the parent you take as a male and which other you take as the female. The results are going to be the same. So, the conclusion would be that the phenotype is not determined by the mother's phenotype, and the smooth trait is dominant to the wrinkled trait in either of the cases. This also proves that this entire Mendelian episode that we have discussed is purely autosomal. Talking of another similar depiction, you find that the reciprocal crosses between the pure breeding parents, they would produce identical results. In our next meeting, we perhaps would like to now discuss the dihybrid cross in details, because the results were very encouraging, and Mendel now proceeded further to find out what happens if he was to take 2 characters at a time. Thank you.